pelicans uh, 30 million years ago. Birds are dinosaurs, and pelicans have many characteristics like all other birds do of dinosaurs. The interesting thing of how they've evolved is that they are not waterproof. By that I mean they're an aquatic bird and they want to be out in the water and foraging for food, but they can't stay out on the water that long. And so every pelican will fly out over the ocean, and our brown pelicans are ocean saltwater birds, if you will. They'll fly out, find food, and come back, but they have to do that in one day. In other words, they cannot spend the night on the water. They would get very, very cold. So what those forage fish want to be where the nutrients are and where the phyto and zooplankton are, and that's further out now because of the temperature of the water. And so when we begin to talk about the issues related to how our pelicans are doing, they're finding it harder to find fish. And the other thing about pelicans is they are what we call a plunge diver. And maybe I've got pictures of them. They fly along and they look down, and usually there's multiples, and they see a big bait, we call it a bait ball, but it's a bunch of fish, a big, huge school of anchovies or something, and they get plunged on into the water. And they open up their bill, which is a pouch, and they scoop that up. Well, their head can go down below the water, but their body can't. That fish have to be within, let us say, 3 or 4 feet of the surface. Well, of course, if the fish wanted to be colder, then they might be deeper. And so not only are the fish further away, but they may be deeper as well. Again, putting stress on simply finding enough food to eat. There's another threat that is lurking. It did have an effect, and that is during World War II in the 40s, there was an organization called Montrose Chemical in basically, I guess in Carson. And they were producing what was then considered almost a miracle insecticide. And it was called DDT, and I can't tell you dimethyl blah, 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 something or other. And offshore DDT, especially offshore of Southern California waters, a horrendous amount of DDT. Well, back when, 25 years ago or so, that because they have that, I mentioned that calcium-based egg, that DDT affects bird when they build their eggs to where the eggs are soft or fragile as a result of ingesting DDT. And so they're in the, I guess it's late 40s, early 50s, and maybe even into the 60s. There was a serious die-off of brown pelicans because they were dying, the eggs were not hatching. And so there were no, you lost generation after generation of brown pelicans because as soon as mom sat on the eggs, they would break. And so, therefore, the brown pelicans were put on the endangered species list. Well, I want to make sure the date is right. In 2009, because the DDT issue had resolved, and populations looked good, they took the brown pelicans off the endangered species list. And you can see photos of them, and farmers loved it because it killed all the insects, and they would broadcast against a fog of DDT going over the farms and whatever. But then there are also places where there were a lot of mosquitoes and what have you in urban areas. And they just put trucks and they just broadcast this all over in a big clouds of it. And so, but when they were manufacturing that chemical and others, they had residue left over or excess product or what have you. And so they had to dispose of that chemical. Now, more or less at the time, it was kind of considered benign, only they then subsequently figured out that it's horrible. But they would just dump it off the coast of Palos Verdes. And there's some pictures now that you see of down at the underneath, at the bottom of the ocean on the seabed, you'll see old rusty barrels that we know are DDT, contain DDT. And so people were reading the logs of Montrose reporting saying, well, we dropped 400 or 1,000 barrels of DDT off the coast on this day at this time. Well, we became aware recently that when they said barrels, they were using that as a measure of quantity, not a measure of how many physical barrels. And so we go back and look at that and say, okay, every time they mention a barrel, it's 44 gallons of in the ocean, not contained. Even if they were in the barrels, they're still, the barrels are going to rust and you can't pick them up because they're fragile. And so part of that. So that's the situation of, and so I think it was probably the early 50s, whatever, when they said, you can't do this. Now, as a result, there is a law that was known as the Montrose Settlement, and so what was left of the chemical company did provide a great deal of money to help resolve the issues related to birds and bird nesting and that kind of thing. And so there was some money as a result of the Montrose Settlement, because not only were pelicans involved, but also bald eagles. And that is, we're beginning to see major die-offs and major events. And this is where we're seeing them really is at International Bird Rescue. And so we've had, well, even back in the, I guess in the 2008, 9, 10, 11, we saw periods of time, it's usually for summer, it's really in the summer, where we were getting in 200, 300, 400 starving brown pelicans. And that continues to this day. It's not every year, but this last year I think, 2005, I think we had 350 birds over the course of 5 weeks that were starving. And we know that they're being affected by warmer water. We know the water is going to get warmer still. You know, all the reports about El Nino and that sort of thing, and what we call the blob, which is an area of especially hot water. So we're all just sort of positioning ourselves to say this is going to be continuing. And we'll probably, and I may try and spark this, but probably going to do another one of these roost counts. But the problem is more in Southern California because of the California countercurrent and things like that that make our water that much warmer than it would be, you know, off the coast of Portland or Seattle or something like that. And then this horrible lurking situation with DDT, saying that could be a serious problem. And nobody seems to have a solution. Nobody. Go out to Yale, you can go out whatever and say here's solutions to climate change, but when you ask people what's the solution to this DDT thing, they say nobody has a clue. So as long as we don't do anything drastic, everybody can learn to live with it, but don't touch it.